Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Necessity versus Commodity. We're going to talk about something super sexy today if you're an online business owner or a sales rep. And it's something that people don't talk too very much about. But it's one of the things where I've seen business owners and sales reps basically get an increase anywhere from 10 to 50% of their profits. And I've got the amazing Will Odhams on today. And an example, Will has brought in over $10 million worth of business as a sales rep, working for people like Vince Del Monte, Ryan Serhan, Jason Capital. He's been with Sales Sniper, where him and I actually cross paths. NEPQ, he's been in the game for a long time. The sexy thing that we're going to be talking about today is how systems can really help you as a business owner or a sales rep to maximize. Because I know myself personally, some of my best months, 30% of my revenue came from my systems and my pipeline that I built. And so many online business owners and sales reps out there don't know how to do that. And now if we're just talking easy numbers, if you're talking you currently make 10 to 20,000 a month, we're talking about an immediate jump up to 30K. If you're making 100K a month, we're talking a jump to $250,000 a month. If you're making $1 million a month, we're talking a potential $2.5 million jump. So systems are super important. Online businesses are starting to understand that level of need, almost like a corporation. That's exactly what Will is a master of and what we're going to discuss today. So Will, dude, I'm super excited to have you. Welcome.
Love it, Scott. Thanks for the introduction. And it's definitely an important thing to jam about. I'm excited to kind of see and explore the conversation a bit. Should be good.
So being a sales rep with you started developing sales. Like you have a record out there of like you had someone in your pipeline and you closed them after like 18, 19 months, right? Yep. So I see so many sales reps out there like, oh, dude, he said no, and never talked to that person again.
Yeah.
Accounts I've worked on too, owners always loved it because in a bad week where ads crashed or a bad month, Scott would have gotten a pipeline, right? And all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden you lift the whole team up just because of your pipeline.
Yeah.
And having a strategy and systems in place to allow you to do that as a rep is really important. Even more so now as me as a business owner, when I had my brick and mortar business, that was super huge. So I understand that. So why did you start focusing on systems so much when you became a rep? So we can kind of move into what you do now with inside business.
For sure. I'd say that, going back to the beginning, it was because I saw an opportunity because amusingly, like I had gotten out of my old job as a personal trainer because I made more in like 2 weeks of online sales than I did in like the gym in the month, 60-hour weeks and all that jazz. And so I was thinking, I'm like, this is interesting. I'm closing 2 or 3 out of 10 deals and I'm still making more than I ever had. This is awesome. But then I'm like, that means 8 out of 10 people are saying no to me, which I was like, okay, I need to get better at sales, which is what led me to learn from everybody, be a sponge. But then I'm like, hey, as long as I don't burn the bridge, like obviously fight hard on the first call for sure if it's appropriate. But as long as I don't burn the bridge and I really care about the relationship, I can actually harvest more like out of that. And so it came from just the desire to, I needed to make more money. So I was like, oh, let's figure out how to like not burn the lead, preserve the relationship, and seeing time and time again more people coming across the line and just kind of encourage the behavior until it became a full-scale operation. Because mainly the reason for systems, to kind of tighten this up, is like I got busy. So then the systems were the thing that allowed me to keep the production going without having to do it manually all the time. And then it's kind of just creating signaling from there.
There are a couple of things you brought up there. First one, I didn't know you were a fitness guy like myself. 25 years, had my own brick and mortar business and did fitness. And that's why I moved in the online space of like, wait a second, people will pay me $8,000 to $15,000 for, and I used to help people reverse rheumatoid arthritis. So that's where I entered, 10 years ago in the online space. But as a brick and mortar business and an online business owner, like you said, like you fill up. Like I get to the gym at 5 a.m., leave at 8.
Yeah.
I'm training clients, teaching classes, doing that stuff, then taking sales calls and coaching clients for online. Dude, you don't have a break. If you don't have systems, good freaking luck.
Yeah.
You brought something up there as well, talking about not burning a lead.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest things that I look at very strategically as well. It's actually where my brain goes looking at strategies and systems. I look at pros and cons and everything because every person, and I know that you experience this too, every business is a little bit different. Every
Yeah.
offer is a little bit different. Every sales process is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So the same tactics don't work. The strategy is what's going to make it successful.
Right.
I want to get your point of view as a sales rep. One of the things that I used to do that I know some online people still do it, they absolutely hate, and I think it burns the crap out of more people than anything, but a fast action discount when you're given price.
I think it can work for certain offers. Here is where I feel weird about it at times is if it's a more of a play than an actuality. I've seen businesses say that to try and get the deal. And then if the dude comes back tomorrow or the next day, they're like, okay, fine. And then they limp in anyway. That I don't think is out of integrity. I have also seen businesses actually stick to it. And it's a certain type of sale. I think it requires certain elements in marketing and the things in the pre-sales process to be in place so that it is the context and the scenario is set to be more of a buying environment. And I've worked on offers where that's the case, and you can create this whole little system, which is actually happening before the call even itself. So then maybe there is, a reason for it. But in other cases, I think there are other ways of positioning acting with urgency around the how you're developing the price and how you're presenting your offer that can accomplish the same thing, and therefore it's just a different tactic. So
Yeah.
it can definitely work. I've seen it work. My whole thing is that when I see that in scripts, I usually ask the person or the sales rep I'm coaching or whatnot, I'm like, but do you actually do that? So in 24 hours you do take the higher amount, no questions asked. And if they say yes, then I'm like, cool, how's that working out for you? And then let's explore it.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful answer. And I'm glad because again, you kind of go the same way as I go. What's the offer look like? And it very oftentimes comes down to the strategy and the marketing you have beforehand,
Yeah.
right? And your commitment. Because again, if you're looking at a Lamborghini and you walk in and the guy's like, hey, this is a $500,000 Lamborghini. You buy it today, it's $400,000. Tomorrow you come back, it's $500,000. I'm buying.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But majority of a lot of offers out there, I don't think it works. And I think you push some people away.
Yep.
So I do think it does become, so I love your answer. And I really appreciate that because I think a lot of people really need to, test certain things. That's certain hard rather than saying, hey, this way is the only way type of deal. Looking at strategies now as like what you're installing into businesses to really help with the systems. You talk about you can take a bit, you've had some clients where you take them for like $50,000 a month to $250,000 a month just with systems. So let's talk about that so people actually understand because systems is a very broad general term. So what are you actually doing inside a business system wise?
Okay, so there's two sources of inspiration that I can kind of share with you that might set the scene of how I approach it. One is both my mom and my grandma were avid gardeners or are avid gardeners. And so my grandma just turned 94. And it's like, how is she still maintaining this immaculate garden that's over half an acre big? And what you notice is like she doesn't do the same thing every day to every single plant in the ecosystem. Every day, little bit of in each little section. And over the course of the month, the whole garden is thriving. And so I started to watch that approach and be like, how can I create the same thing in a CRM where it's like each individual lead gets the appropriate type of care, where if they're an annual, a perennial, a tree, a shrub, a vegetable, like they have to have the different types of actions, right? And so that's how I started to think about it because pretty visual person and the CRM is just a wall of data, which is valuable, but how do you turn it into a little bit of a game of like, am I watering this part of the garden today? A little bit. The other thing that I thought about is almost like, and kind of a part of our business name is Unlock Hades. Hades stands for High Activity Dynamic Expansion Systems. What that comes up with is it's like almost like New York. You have this epic thriving city, but underneath it, the way that it shuttles people around is using the trains, right, and the subway. Underneath that, there's all the sewer systems. That's how it is such a thriving metropolis. So I'm like, how can I map out what's behind the business so that all of the things like flow down properly and they're actually able to shuttle leads around everywhere so that everything has its place and nothing is kind of getting dropped. And that's a lot of what we're putting in place is like, here are the nets underneath the apple trees that actually, we know stuff's going to happen. Human error is the biggest thing of why it does. But if you put up nets everywhere, then you're catching it every single day and you have kind of new fruit to pick, that's like, these are the ones that are actually worth following up with, because time is precious. If you only have 30 minutes a day, call these 10 people because they're most likely to need that re-engagement right now, for example.
Beautiful. Talking about like systems there, you kind of talk about a process. I think that analogy is awesome. And looking at a buyer that certain way, either perennial or annual, like, and what section am I working on today? And that's where a lot of businesses and sales reps really get lost. All of a sudden, you've got 200 names and you don't know where they are anywhere, right? And it's just like anything. If you don't know what to do, you don't take any action because there's nothing to do. Now, when you talk like a CRM and you're talking about setting up a system, are you talking like setting up SOPs? Like, here's your PDF SOP, or are you talking about automations? Are you talking about software, or kind of a combination of all of it?
Yeah, like in short, yes, all of it. And actually, that's the whole premise of, back to the analogy, everything needs to work together in order for it all to work properly, right? All the pipes need to flow into the right place, otherwise leaking, right? And so, yes, it is having strategies of what to do when buckets land in this bucket. Oh, great. Well, here's a bunch of leads, as you said. What do you do with them? So you are going to need an SOP or a strategy. And each sales process is slightly different based off their avatar, psychographics, and everything else. So there's common strategies, but what I think made my follow-up strategies work more effectively is I sat there and like I did kind of tailor them, and it was like a little bit of fine tuning of like, let me put the shoe on the other foot. And if I was this person I hadn't spoken with in 90 days who had a money objection and this was what they were pitched, it's like, well, then how would I like to receive a message from this random dude that I talked to for 45 minutes? Like, that's the real scenario and what we actually need to gamify here. And so what is that tactical approach? Because I don't ever want to come across as annoying, because the longevity of the relationship is more important to me. Keeping the ball in motion is the game. It's like the game here in follow up to me, and I've kind of taught this, is like the game is getting acknowledgement, getting a response, not getting back a commitment. Very rarely people I'm following up with are like, hey, I'm ready to go. Like, that happens sometimes, but most of the time it's just keeping the ball in play so that I can talk to them again. And like, that's what you're looking for, is how can I get a response and an acknowledgement, not a commitment? Because that will change how you're framing the messages too.
1,000%. And I loved how you reframed it of saying, hey, if I was this person, how would I like to just get a phone call 90 days later? Right. And I think that's a huge problem out there in the online space. You have so many people that are coming in that are young. It's the first time being sales. Yeah. They think if they have a script or there's some magic one-liner.
Yeah.
With my whole follow-up process, nobody ever taught me a follow-up process. And a light bulb just went off my head when you just talked about that. When I was a personal trainer and working in gyms, I would meet, and someone got a membership, I would meet with them in the first 2 days. I'd talk to them, sell them my personal training, they bought or not, right? I would see them 2 days later or 2 weeks later or 2 months later, and I would go up and approach. And it was a natural thing that I just did. And I just naturally did that then with my follow-up. Mm-hmm. And I see so many people out there stressing, oh my gosh, I need to text this person. I'm going to go to a Facebook group. Hey, if I'm sending a text message to someone I haven't talked to in 30 days, what should I say to them? Like, if you think that there's some magic one-liner in that moment, good luck. You're losing that sale. Yeah. And so you having going, hey, how would I like that approach? So let me ask, like, each person a little bit different. And you brought that up, which I think is awesome too, because I don't think everybody and every single person should be treated the same. What were some of the things that you did to keep that relationship going? Me personally, I sometimes send like a random GIF or a meme. Gosh, I've sent people motivational videos for like 90 days, like YouTube videos. So it just always depends on the person. What were some things that you did to follow up with people?
Yeah, like, it is putting the shoe on the other foot. I think the biggest thing that also is important is follow-up starts on the first call. So what I mean by that is, yes, take the sales call, do your best to handle what you need to do. And ideally that results in a sale or a commitment. But if not, great. Now we need to do a new sale. We need to sell them on the idea of having a follow-up relationship. And what that means for me is I'm getting a bunch of little other micro commitments and tie downs that aren't necessarily financially related, but they're commitments around their commitment to change. Because ultimately that's what a lot of what we're selling is, just a vehicle to get a desired result. So if
Yep.
you can then add value to that relationship and collect some details like their objection, like their context, like their timeline, then you can follow up with them in a more genuine way. So then when it comes 30 days, 90 days from now, it's what do you say? It's like, hey, how's that project you've been going on with your kids? Or, hey, how's the master's program coming? Or, hey, like it's like you can ask about their goal or what they're trying to achieve, because then it's just actually showing up in a way that they know you're a sales rep most of the time. So you don't always need to announce yourself. It's me again. Like it's like you kind of just actually be involved in a champion of what they're trying to achieve with the solution they were desiring in the first place.
1,000%. I want people to really understand like the complexity and the importance of what Will just said on the sales call near the end. It's kind of the same thing if someone needs to actually go, square away some finances, or there is a true partner, business, or spouse conversation needs to be had. Always book a meeting from a meeting, right? The same thing, you're getting that commitment of like, dude, I'm going to follow up with you because this is a serious goal, but they were committed to making a change. They bought into you actually being the solution, right? They know that you're there to solve the
Higher
problem.
standard too. That's the other
Yes.
piece of it, is like, it's almost like at some point you're like, fine, you're not moving forward in the way that you want to. Well, then what are you going to do in the meantime to honor what you shared with me today? And so that it becomes like this like place of service and leadership in the call. And
Agreed.
ultimately I try and frame it like, hey, may I make a suggestion? Like I can get permission so that I'm like, hey, well, I understand, we're going to speak next week after you do X, Y, and Z. And I think this time works correct. Okay, you're confirming. But it's like, in the meantime, what can you be doing and actions you can be taking that are going to help? It's like, I'm going to give you these things. Are you going to spend time to actually do these things? And so it actually becomes more of like a real conversation and getting like a real genuine commitment out of the next action. So that's what you have to set.
And when you're looking at setting up systems like this and you're kind of doing these process, what percentage of people do you feel like actually continue going through and come back? If you take 100 sales calls in a 90-day period, just as an example and a number, and like how many of those do you think you're actually continuing compared to the ones that just start ghosting you? Just so if someone was tracking those numbers, they don't feel like, hey, wow, Will and Scott, every person they talk to is becoming their best friends type of deal.
No, and that's the thing, is you have to choose who to focus on. So I suppose, let me try and answer this in two ways. One, I look at 4 different types of lead behaviors. And so you're looking at people that are going from changing behavior. So then there's like, first of them is like someone who is like actually accepting all your invites. They're responsive, right? The second one is someone who's acknowledging. So at least they're opening your emails, but they're not responding, but they're showing up to the appointments, right? Or they don't always respond, but they do kind of honor the original plan, right? And then there's ones that are ghosting, which is when they're going from A or B to now C. And then there's the unresponsive leads who are always leaving you unread, who probably didn't show up to most of the appointments. And so based off their behaviors and how fast they're switching between them, also chooses what prioritization I give them. So like, I'm not the people that are always unresponsive, I'm going to put them more into a generalized farming kind of sequence to begin with, so that they have a place, but then it's not taking much my time. And like, that's where you can kind of start kind of figuring out like what is the right action for what type of outcome that you're looking for.
Agreed. Looking at the business aspect of things rather than just follow up. So if I go, hey, Will, I've got my business, I want to hire you to come in and do systems, right? What are you going to go through? Are you going to do an audit of my business? Are you going to go through things? What are you going to say? Hey, Scott, you've got this issue, you got this issue, you want to come in and solve X, Y, Z. Just kind of start talking a little bit about the business side too.
Sure. Ultimately, it's a lot of identification, and then we're going to be able to problem solve and then grow and scale from there, like a basic 3-step kind of process. Right now, the main focus that we are able to do quite quickly is we're going to come in and do more of a CRM audit for looking for all the holes where things are dropping off, maybe expectedly or unexpectedly, and then coming up with strategies around how to untrap that lost revenue. And so sometimes that's going to be maybe making some tweaks to the infrastructure or adding in some different filters so that people can have better visibility. Other times that's, adding strategies and coming up with those step-by-step diagrams, because that way you can actually pass that down to your sales team to actually get the implementation and the follow through. And then a lot of it is then applying it so that as these things happen, how well are they functioning, so that we can actually see follow through and efficacy of the follow-up systems and the strategies, so that where to fine tune. And then training, sales reps and different teams or business owners on like how to do the follow-up, because there is like what happens on the call, what happens off the call. But sure, call the damn leads, I agree, but like sometimes what do you say that isn't cheesy, and actually leads in a conversation that leads somewhere? And if you just chase the deal too much on the phone, by the time you finally contact them, you'll burn it unintentionally. So you have to actually kind of restoke the fires a little bit, right? So that's where we can be able to kind of coach from there around that stuff as well.
And you bring up a really good point. I think that's, yeah, call the damn leads. Again, going back to my fitness days, hey, here's a book of people that have walked in the door for the last 12 months that didn't buy. Start calling them, and gosh, those days sucked, but they were also really fun at the same time.
There's a time and place for it,
Yeah, correct. But that, to your point too, of if you're just calling to just call, are you irritating somebody on their side? Are they blocking you, or are you actually getting a response? And that's why it's important to have, to your point, of putting in certain SOPs and training somebody on it. Because again, if they don't know what to do, or if they feel uncomfortable, like, dude, I have 2 days straight of 8 hours of a bunch of hangups and FUs. Like, I don't want this job any further. Compared to like 8 hours of on the phone, you've booked 10 appointments, you've closed 2 deals, you've just made XYZ in commissions, going awesome, right? And so knowing what to do, and I'm glad you're coaching people on that, because call the damn leads is correct, but it's also sometimes the wrong mentality, I guess, sometimes.
Well, here's the thing is like, what leads and why? And if you can, and like, that's the thing is, if you're able to quickly see which leads and have a reason for calling them, like, these are people we haven't spoken with in 90 days that had a money objection and a partner objection. So I'm like, cool. Well, then we'll come up with a specific email template that works for a money and partner objection that's relevant to that audience. We'll kind of base off some customization based off how long it is to make it more personal and effective. And then we'll play with like the open subject line and the opening line to try and see which one gets a better response rate. So as we drip feed it out over 500 or 50 to 100 to 500 leads, we can start kind of improving upon our response rate. And then we get on a call with them, right? And it's like, then you can have like a chain reaction of events. And when you can show up to the day that way, it makes it easier and more motivating to call the damn leads, because you actually know why you're calling the people and who to call. That is at least a rationale for then being more specific in the scripting as well.
And I'm glad you just said that, because some people are going to be going, dude, I don't have them all separated between, be money or spouse or by objection. And I'm sure there are a lot of people like, fuck, I don't do that at all. Right. And I think there's a lot of things there within businesses and sales reps where they're missing these important things you can install to get a data point, or to bring that person through an ideal buyer journey and kind of continue it. And talking about CRMs, so how are you tracking that? What CRMs do you decide? How do you help people kind of put people in those buckets? So business owner really kind of gets an understanding of like, hey, it's not that hard, because that sounds like a lot of work to me.
Fair enough. I think here is kind of the premise on where a lot of the systems that I started with building have come from and now developed to, is that you realize, because I've worked on Close.io, HubSpot, Go High Level, Pipedrive, like even like Infusionsoft at one point for a short while. Like, I've been on a lot of CRMs. The reality is a lot of these CRMs have the same types of functionalities. They're just in slightly different places. But oftentimes you see all these tutorials on how to use the new feature and how to do the new thing. But very rarely do you see, here's how you tie all of your features, advantages, and benefits together of all these CRMs. And that's kind of what I started to realize, is like, the features, the logic might be a little different, or where to find the view, but a lot of them can use different types of dynamic lists that are based off variables that have conditional formats. You can do those types of Boolean searches and figure it out. And then it's just setting it up so it matches how you set up the rest of your CRM and your tagging. But like that's kind of where you have to start, is like I look more on fundamental principles, that there's only so many different ways of like seeing the leads. So then now it's just figuring out the effective ways based off your sales process and how we map it in, and then how we collect data to make sure it's happening. Because
Yeah.
that's the easiest thing is, as I said, again, like human error is like, I was the sales rep. I drop balls all of the time and let leads, unfortunately, like fall off the radar. And that's where some of these reactivation strategies came from. But at the same time, it's like, if you could find ways of like constantly preventing human error from compounding, it's like a signaling system, then you're like, oh, cool. Like I can catch it at the end of the day. And as long as I clear the slate at the end of the day, all my admin's taken care of, right? And it's like, now I don't have to worry, things like that as well.
Yeah. And I'm glad you went that deep. It was a lot more clarity, and people saw there's other moving parts there. And you're right. Like there's a lot of different CRMs out there, and it blows me away, whether you're a solopreneur, you got a small team of 5 or 50 sales reps and a huge team. How many owners have no idea how to use their CM properly? Blows my mind.
Usually it's because, well, from what I've found is it's because there's like too many cooks in the kitchen at sometimes, because like marketing will come in and throw a bunch of UTM codes and all that jazz, which is valuable for sure. But then, sales managers that might be different when the beginning of the business to the middle of the business, they put in different types of import features every time they need to import different types of leads, but didn't quite think about how to set it up so that it's not chaos, right? Like it's just like compounding little issues that make the CRM like not effective, so that you can't search through it in a logical fashion. And is it connected to all of your other data so that it can actually be valuable to you? Because if you're relying on your CRM for data, we need to make sure it's accurate. And that's, otherwise you can't make fast decisions at all. And that's kind of where it's like, if you actually have the conversation of what does the sewer system look like the god of the underworld, it's like, how do we figure this out so that this will work at 100K a month and this will work at $1 million plus a month, right? We need to think about what systems are going to be in place, as you might have setters, as you might have closers, as you might need to look like far and wide on how to actually design something that makes sense for your sales process as well. Because not every pipeline can use similar features, but I do think sometimes there is the need for different levels of customization to optimize the process.
Agreed. And when you're looking at those certain softwares, it's kind of like looking at ads stats, right? Like you've got certain data points you need to look at. And I think that's why it's so important for an owner to be able to go into their CRM, pull up specifics, or a sales manager or the sales rep jumping in. That's why it needs to be really streamlined. And you kind of just talking about that, it kind of would give me some flashbacks. There was an offer I went into. Their CRM, when I first came on, it was like I was chasing chickens. It just things everywhere that didn't make any sense, and just random stuff, and going, how are you guys functioning like this? And then other ones, it's like you've got 10 military guys all in a team, all doing their job, just marching away and getting the job done. It's like, whew. And that's why it's one of the things, not only can it save you hours of headache every single week, it allows you to step in and actually look at things, numbers, and immediately know the answer. But more importantly, when you're that efficient, that's where you see that big jump in increase of revenue coming in, because you're getting people coming back. You're nurturing the people that need to be, to where maybe it's 30 days or 6 months down the road, they're coming back. So all of a sudden you see huge increases in sales.
Yeah.
What are a lot of those increases you see? Where do they come from? Is it because of follow-up? Is it because of nurture? Is because the sales reps just finally know what to do? Is a combination of all of it? Like, where do you see some of the biggest?
It's funny. I was smiling because I'm thinking like that's the best part about having a decent thought out system, and like not giving up on the leads too, is like, as long as you don't give up and you keep taking calls, yes, a percentage of them are going to be unqualified, a percentage of them are going to sell, but then whatever that middle percentage is, it's like that just keeps getting bigger every single day. And so like then it becomes just hilarious, because it's like I would put a follow-up hour in my schedule every day pretty much, and I would sometimes schedule follow-ups in that hour, or other times I do outbound, but that hour ended up becoming more profitable oftentimes than my entry calls, just because I could line up 4 15-minute appointments, and through effective little nudges, now all 4 of them just went in an hour, right? And it's like, well, therefore you kind of actually have this compounding effect. So I guess like, yeah, to answer your question is like the fact of the matter is I think the gains start happening as long as you just don't give up and you keep prioritizing that hour a day is important, because it starts to just like have more of a compounding effect. Plus you get more creative. Like it's everything about feedback loops. So like if you try to email someone twice and it doesn't work, it's like, well, then try something else and get creative. Like you said, maybe then send them just something that's like a podcast that actually might help them. Now, like a little tip that I would do is if I'm sending them a resource like that, I would say like, hey, check out minute 1329.
Yeah.
Think you
Oh,
might,
yeah.
so then you start kind of signaling a little bit, which actually shows them that you're going the extra mile, also increases the chance of them going off the email as well. Like not a copywriter, still want to learn that skill set, but found little tricks like along the way from that sense as well.
And yeah, if you're sending out text messages, and I love that. It's kind of like if I send something, I always put that there because it is like a headline, right? You want to get them to bite and you want to make them curious. You also want to let them know that, hey, I thought about you personally. No, I didn't just random suddenly. It's the same thing. If I shoot you a Loom video, I'm gonna say, hey, Will, specifically at minute 2:15 out of this 4-minute video, I talk about this, which we discussed, and I think I got the key for you.
Yeah.
Right. Now you're gonna fucking watch that thing, right?
Exactly.
Not, hey, I did this Loom video for you, or hey, watch this video. So that's
Yeah.
a really powerful thing.
And then if they don't watch it, then you can actually follow up where there's context, because it's like, hey, how did you go implementing that thing I told you about? And then they feel self-conscious and then they go watch it. And then now we're back in the game, right? Like it's like,
correct.
perfect.
It's fun little games. And I was smirking there when you were talking about the compounding effort too, because gosh, our brains obviously work very, very closely, because when I'm looking at strategies, tactics, and game plan, I always look at pros and cons. But I'm also my brain is very strategic and very visionary. And when you're talking about the compounding effect, like as sales reps, like you can go the standard, hey, if you bat 300, you're in the Hall of Fame, right? So out of every 10, there should be 3 that automatically close, 3 that are just a wrong.
Yeah.
You didn't close 4 of them. Guess what? They're there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. And you got 4 more. Now you got 8 people. By the end of the week, you have 20 people that you can buy from. That's how quickly this can compound, and why you can go from a 50K month to $250,000 a month in 60 days or less. Those numbers sound ridiculous, but when you realize, hey, if every single week for the past 8 weeks, there've been 20 people there.
Yeah.
Dude, you're 160 people that are like, I want to buy from you. I just didn't the first time, but I'm still here. I want to buy. Like, holy shit. Like, think about that as a business owner, right? Like it's crazy numbers.
Well, the most fun part is actually realizing that when we start working with companies, if they haven't been doing it, this is a kind of a great thing, because it means it's like, great. That means there's actually a bunch of leads we need to reactivate. So you could literally be sitting on 20, 30, 50, 100K of extra revenue that you could then put back into your ad spend, right? It's like, and I'm giving that back to you initially because it's going to rain because you haven't been doing it. And which is a good thing in this case, because then you can entrap that revenue and then prevent it from happening in the future as well.
And this is why systems are so sexy.
Yeah.
It really is, right? Like it's when you set it up, like you can streamline. And the beautiful thing is too, that it's just like building a funnel. Like everyone looks for that funnel that you don't have to touch for 5 years, right? You set up the right system. It might take like you bring Will into your business, 30 days, 90 days, whatever it's going to take to really install, dial sync, get the team up and going. That 30 days, 90 days has set a foundation for permanent success over the next 3 years plus.
Yep.
And when you think about, again, if you're going from 50K and you go up to 100K in just a month, dude, you're talking big time numbers at the end of the year. You're talking $500,000 just right there, right? And oftentimes it compounds. But having these systems also, so many people are so curious about ROI on the ad, ROI in the ad, and only pay attention to, hey, I spent $10, I only got 15 back, so I only made a $5 ROI. Well, now with the proper systems, in reality, you can get that. And all of a sudden now you're getting $100 back for that $10.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than just looking for the instant gratification
Yeah.
again, looking at like the long game. And that's really where these businesses like Vince Del Monte, you work for him. It his sales aren't coming in every single day just because of an ad. It's
No.
not just because of an email. And that's why like a business needs to have multiple strategies, multiple systems in place if they really want to scale. If
Yeah.
you don't have the system, your strategy, your lead generation strategy is going to suffer because of it. Your sales process is going to suffer from it. And it brings everything together to really almost 10x like what can be done within your business with $1 and one lead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you need something that just allows that to like communicate from marketing all the way down to sales. Cause that's what we look at is like, if you can then track which lead source is closing the most effective, maybe you can then look at the lead source to which programs it's producing the most sales around so that you can then push it back to marketing. And then you can also look at which closers are maybe closing each lead source so that you can then change that strategy. Like it's like knowing how to connect the marketing and sales, because often they're in opposition of each other, or they're like, it's the marketing fault, it's the sales fault. It's like, if we can actually see visibility the whole way down, that allows for us to kind of see how the chain can like pass back and forth a little bit more effectively as well.
Yeah. Well, you just kind of talking about that and kind of tracking things, certain offers, when I would go on to them, I would negotiate my pay and how things were. And
Yeah.
I always had a negotiation. There were a couple of different things that I did. Number one, within 10 days or within 10 days, if someone refunded, I didn't get paid my commission. They refunded after 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the owner because that was a fulfillment issue. That wasn't a me issue.
Yeah.
And a lot of owners knew me too, knowing that, hey, I wasn't bringing in the wrong person. So never had to really worry about it. Actually, in a 25-year career, I've only had 8 people ever refund on me in my career.
Wow. Good job.
But I also had people that after 30 days of the initial call, I got an additional percentage as well because I was doing extra work for that type of deal. And I had one owner, he's like, dude, I think you put that in there and you're not closing people on the first one just to make more money 30 days later, type of deal. But that can be really the power of having a proper system in place that if a business owner is coming to me like, dude, you did that on purpose, so I owe you an extra percentage. No, you want to close every deal as fast as possible and you don't ever want to risk something of that. And so it was a joke, but it was also, hey, this works. And it was one of the things of like, hey, what are you doing? Because he had me work with a couple other, the sales guys to get them on point. And all of a sudden we doubled his revenue in about 4 months just because everybody was doing kind of the same type of system. And having you come into a business to do that for somebody is huge. Now, there might be a lot of different people that are listening to it. It could be a sales rep, a solopreneur, somebody with 50 sales reps that's watching us right now. What type of businesses do you actually work with and why?
Yeah. I would say like the ideal client at this moment is probably people that are either wanting to build a sales team or just starting to build a sales team and are either struggling with their CRM setup or they just kind of set one up and have been using it, but haven't thought about the strategy. Excellent. Or something that's established where they're now operating out of different Google Sheets. They have a lot of leads. They're scaling their revenue month over month. They're scaling their ad spend. So I would want to make sure that all of the holes are plugged, because the faster that they're trying to grow, if we can keep extracting more out of that through different strategies and training the sales team on how to effectively stay on top of these leads, then everybody wins. And I think the other piece is what's funny too, is just thinking about why the follow-up is so important in the systems, is that ideally you're getting better at sales, your team is winning, so there's more client success stories. So like the longer you keep the ball in play, you should be able to close that deal because you are getting better. Your company has more value and assets and momentum, and you're constantly showering them with proof. Like it should be, those deals are so easy to grab if you're prioritizing them appropriately with your inbound calls as well in that sense.
Yeah. And it's why systems are so important to profits, and you kind of were talking about the faster and you're starting to scale, right? I'm glad you said, hey, you are working with smaller businesses.
Yeah.
Because really, if you're a smaller business or a solopreneur, start with the fundamentals, right? It's why people go pay $5 million to buy a McDonald's. It's not because they like golden arches, it's not because they like a Happy Meal. It's because there's system in place that you open the doors. Everybody knows their job. Everything's functioning. Everything's working right. So when a first customer comes in, it's the same experience as every other McDonald's. So you're paying for the system. And the
Yeah.
quicker you can install a system, the better it's going to be for your business for a lot of different reasons, not just saving you time and making more money right now, but as you scale. Because like you said, some of the other businesses you step into that they've already been scaling.
Yeah.
The more you're scaling without systems, the leakier your bucket it is.
Yeah.
And I've talked to some business owners, and when they start like really looking at it, they kind of get sick. Going, dude, like, yeah, let's go back 18 months. Dude, you lost it like $1 million
Yeah.
by having this little thing done. And you're
So let's
doing
get it back, right? Like,
yeah, and that's exactly it. Like, cool, it's gone, but that's a learning experience, you know. Maybe it's not the best way to spend to get educated, but that's cool, right? But let's do this now type
yeah.
of deal. And so when you're scaling somebody up, you brought up the sales team part too. So you guys do sales training? Do you do sales placement too, or just set the systems and then they're kind of up, figure that stuff out on their own?
So what we're doing is we are coming in, kind of checking a look, making some adjustments if necessary, or putting in some different strategies. And then, yeah, we're in, like, what we realized is like, it's easy to put in the systems and set up the strategies, but then we're back to the same problem: call the damn leads. That's what the message is to the sales reps. Like, great, there's systems, call the damn leads. But if there's not knowledge on how to use the systems, there's not the right mindset to how to follow up conversation, there's not some templates and other things that are created, that's not going to get the follow through. So therefore the system won't work for them. So yeah, part of it is almost like ingraining some new habits and getting some kind of clarity around that, so that, yes, of course, still prioritize the first call. I never said that, right? It's like, but actually put yourself in a position that if it's not closing, that all the data is logged and that you'll be able to find that lead again and easily kind of identify it for what type of stage it's at.
Awesome. And I hope people understand the importance of the piece of you coming in and helping with the sales team or implementing and doing that. It's kind of, oftentimes I look at business as kind of like an NFL sports franchise, right? Like you got the owner,
Yeah.
head coaches come and go, offensive coordinators come and go, playbooks come and go, top players come and go, and all those type of things. And it's a constant moving thing to try to be as successful as possible. And sometimes when you have a change in a playbook because you have a different offensive coordinator, you need to get everybody on the same page. Like, do they trust this process? Do they understand it? You got to practice it. And having you actually walk through that, because you said, getting them so they understand and why, because you've been a sales rep, you get it. Sometimes you're told to do something.
Yeah.
I'm fine sometimes in certain scenarios. Just tell me what to do and I'm gonna go do it. Other times, if you don't tell me why we're doing it, it's a struggle for me, because my brain's trying to figure out, like, why are we doing this change? Right. Rather than if you come in and you're telling me, okay, Scott, this is what we're doing with the team. We're going to be implementing this. This is what we're changing. Here's why. We're going to be adding this. Here's why. So now I can see the mechanical, and that's my strategic analytical brain. It helps me go, cool, now I'm 100% on board, rather than just do what you're told type of deal. And there are a lot of sales reps out there that when change starts happening, they get really squirrely and you can see numbers tank. And you could be careful about that too.
But yeah, if you can spot the changes early, you know what to actually like solve around. And if you have the visibility, you can turn your ship around in the middle of the month. There's still time, because there's, you can have different ways of viewing what you need to do to meet your own objectives as well.
With your business and what you do, is it you? Do you have a partner? Do you have a team around you? What's that look like?
So I got a business partner. His name's David. Him and I have worked together on a variety of projects. He comes from an operations background. He was the operations manager of multiple 7- and 8-figure businesses. So he likes being behind the scenes. He controls all the automations and how the data kind of flows. And then I handle more of the CRM and the sales side of things as well. So that together we have a pretty good dynamic of like all sales type operations facets, which has been good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What are the goals for the next 6 months to finish out the year for you guys, business wise?
It's twofold. One, like, we want to, crack into the 7-figure level for our own business, as well as the intention is to move over to our own software product, which will give us the ability to kind of get the reports done in a way that, will be more effective. So that gives us the ability to serve more clients faster, which will be fun.
Awesome. I'm gonna throw something out there because it's a huge buzzword over the past 6 months. AI.
Yeah,
AI is pretty amazing.
it is.
And I also see a lot of people using it and failing drastically, thinking that they're actually doing things better. Do you
Yeah.
guys use anything AI automation wise with what you do with systems? Because obviously you can set up some AI and you can build some bots, and there are a lot of things and it can be really good. But I've also seen it fail. I actually put out a post the other day. I connected with someone on Facebook and they sent me, hey, great to connect. Boom. Hey, are you interested? And then I didn't respond because I knew it was just a sales pitch. And they text me question mark, question mark.
Yeah,
I text back question mark, question mark.
I
And then
saw
it
that.
was right. Like that's just automation. Like if you think that putting that in your business is going to make you successful,
Right.
you're out of your darn mind. That's not a successful system. So do
Yeah.
you guys use AI at all? Do you not? Are you opposed to it? Like what's your take on it? What would you warn a business owner about using AI?
I think it's I think it's a useful tool, but just needs to be thought about in very specific use cases because, and I still think it's a bit a ways from where we want it to be. I do think it's going to be very valuable. Here's where I think it's going to be perfect. And maybe this is out there right now, but it's like if the AI can review the whole client history, listen to the original call, understand the whole like context and the emotional personality of that other person, and then review the timelines, review the whole game tape, and then be like, the next best action is to text this person this thing because of this reason. Like when we can get there, then you're right. Our AI bot will be able to kind of just review conversations and keep them going and be normal. And we can give it rules and parameters. And I'm sure I've seen like a lot of different messaging sequences out there, but then it's to your point, is it personal enough so that you can create it? Now, I see we're not currently using anything AI in ours, but the reality is why we want, more of our own data set is that when we have all of the data, applying AI to it is a lot easier.
Yep.
And if you want to train your AI to do a certain type of contextual text or sequence or email activation, being able to segment the list and be like, here is this specific list of people with this specific problem where pitch the specific offer. Now, knowing all of that data and context, please design the best chat sequence to re-engage these people. So like it can be an extension of having a good system and a categorization buckets like set up to begin with so that you can leverage a tool like AI more effectively.
Yeah, and I'm glad you called it a tool. I look at it the same way. It's like a paintbrush, right? If you put a paintbrush in my hand compared to like a Michelangelo,
Fair.
we'll get a little bit different of a painting, I think, right? And I see that a lot too. I think a lot of business owners like, oh, AI and just magically you're going to change your business. Well, no, you have no idea how to use the tool. And that's why, again, hiring someone like you is so important of even if they were implementing AI, having a human to actually come in and solve the problem that has been there, done that, knows how to do it. I think we'll always get better results with than AI currently. Now, 2 years from now, we might be in a different place. Who knows where things kind of go. But and adding AI, but also if you go into a business and you put in systems and getting this squared away, yeah, if you end up using AI, that person has some AI and you can put it on top of it. Now the system actually becomes Michelangelo to use that brush, and it just increases you even more. And why it's so important not to depend just on tech, right? It's kind of like depending on ClickFunnels or Go High Level to write my VSL or landing page.
Yeah.
Probably not, right? But I'll use their tech to get there. So I'm glad that take is. Are you messing around with AI at all just to kind of start learning on your own, or are you guys not really doing that quite yet?
I mean, since ChatGPT came out, I've been rocking and rolling on it. I think it's fascinating just to give me different ideas and different ways to work on my own prompt engineering because it's actually amusing. It's like I think sales reps or sales professionals will be able to actually utilize the technology like that very well because it's all about how well you can ask questions, right? Because it's a conversation. And so your ability to ask a more specific, detailed, intentional, contextual conversation is actually a game changer on getting better outputs. And that pretty much relates to sales, right? It's like you can understand the context and ask a more poignant question and use a better vocabulary and a different angle and an emotional intensity. Boom, we can get where we want to go in a conversation. So Yeah, like I've been playing with it. I use it a lot for ideation. I use it a lot to argue with me, which is just like helpful for me to refine my ideas. Like, what am I missing? What could improve it? I iterate around it as well. Like I feed it back to itself. So it's
Yep.
no, it's fun. And I've been playing with bunch of different tools with it as well, but nothing concrete yet as far as offering a service within that, right? So
Cool. Yeah, it's a fun tool, and if people aren't using it, I've seen this quote by multiple people over the last 90 days, and I couldn't agree with it more. AI is not going to replace your job, but the person that's using AI will replace your job, right?
yeah.
Because it's like how good of a tool are you with a tool type of scenario. So, if anybody wants to get a hold of Will, there's going to be a link to connect with them in the comments. So do that if you have any questions. He puts out some really good content. He's amazing. He's been in the space. He's somebody that I know and respect, and I know he always gets clients results and brings way more value and going to really improve your business if you're working with them. So reach out to him, follow him, connect with him if you need help. Will, is there anything you want to leave people with a couple minutes left before we have to jump?
I mean, the message that I like repeating a lot in terms of how I think about following up in systems is set the next action. So, like, if you don't set the next action in the sequence, in the system, if there needs a place for somewhere to go, if you haven't done that, then you've already dropped the ball. And so, like, if you kind of always remember just to set the next action, you're always thinking about how to maintain the momentum that you've already built behind you in that. So, it's kind of an easy rule of thumb to apply to most of my approaches, I suppose.
I'm glad you just said that. I know there's a lot of sales reps and business owners right now that they just went through a bunch of leads they didn't have the next action set for in the past few weeks. And like, damn it, I'm missing money. I need Will. So
Exactly.
Will, dude, I'm so glad to have you on. It's been an honor chatting with you. Hey, if anybody has questions about stuff too, comment below, and either I can send those questions over to Will, or he comes back on, we answer some of those questions. I always want to make sure that if you're watching, if you're a sales rep, a business owner, and you have questions on stuff that you have support to get those. So drop it below and we'll kind of go from there. So again, Will, thanks for coming on, and I'm glad for us to connect, and we'll do something soon.
Awesome, Scott. It's been a great time. And yeah, I really appreciate the interaction. It's been fun.